Guys, I really tried with this one. Like, really tried with this one. But by the end of the game, I'm still pretty unsure on how I sit with Final Fantasy VII Remake. Hello everyone, I am Sir UD, and with February around the corner, I decided to play Final Fantasy VII. Decided to give it a try. So unless you've been sleeping under a rock, you know that February is Final Fantasy VII's month to shine, I guess. With the anticipated sequel Rebirth coming out this month, I decided to see what the remake's hype was around it, I guess. I wanted to see why everybody was raving about this game as much as they were. I've had friends tell me that it's amazing. I've had people online tell me that it's really good. I've seen YouTube videos about why the remake is so good. And so it's liked by most people, and there's very few people I hear complain about it. And we'll get to those complaints later. But I wanted to give it a shot. To give some context, I've only previously played Final Fantasy 16. And even though that game has some things I don't like some things I really don't like, I enjoyed the overall story of the game. It's one of my favorite games probably of all time now. I loved it. But I knew going into that game that it was a pretty big departure from the rest of the series. It focuses on a single character and played more like Devil May Cry with a God of War style camera compared to the rest of these Final Fantasy games. So I went into Final Fantasy VII Remake to try and see what a normal Final Fantasy game had to offer, so to speak. I know this isn't normal per se, because all these games are different and each one tells a different story and has its own mechanic and everything like that. But I know 16 was such a big departure. I wanted to see what a typical Final Fantasy experience would be like. And, I went into this one with an open mind, but I left more divided than what I thought I would be going into this experience. So let's start with my positives about the game. There is a few. I definitely did really like some things about this game. This is kind of things I thought worked or things I thought that were done really well. I think the major one, of course, is kind of where the story was going. Now, I don't know the original story of Final Fantasy VII. I kind of kept away from it to try and give this one a fair shot, because I feel like if I knew the full original story and then I played this, my impressions of it would be tainted. And so that got me wanting to go into a blind. This is from a blind experience from a person that's never really played a Final Fantasy before. But when I played this, it got me invested in the characters. I know there's some differences from the first game. I don't know specifics, but I do know there is some differences. Like Jesse apparently wasn't very much of a character in the first game, but I really got invested in the side characters a lot more than what I thought I would. Just like in Final Fantasy 16, this game has some pretty high points, but there is some stuff I felt that could be taken out. We'll get to those when we get to some of my negatives about the game. I don't think we should talk about it here. It's more of the level design that I don't like, to kind of give a little explanation into it, which is the same way I felt about 16. I love the story, but I felt that the level designs and some of the parts of the story could have been a bit better. I will say I kind of felt that the game was dragging or a little bit boring until about halfway through the game. There's a big event that sets the stakes and starts getting you kind of more emotionally attached to these characters. They're making jokes, they're being goofy and all this and that at the beginning half of the game. The second half is a lot more serious and it's a lot more, interconnected. I felt that it was a lot better and a lot clearer of a story than what the first half was. The first half just felt like they were going on some random adventures or doing some random shit. I know it's not random, but it doesn't feel important like the second half of this game does. You gotta see the characters get emotional, scared, frustrated. And once we got to this point in the story, I actually got intrigued and invested. Like I said, the beginning half of this game was kind of a slog. I pushed through it though, just knowing that it would have to get better based on what people said. Another plus was how well each character was written out. I'm used to playing single player narrative games, and I play a lot of multiplayer games. So I've never really played a game where you focus on a full set of a party. I played some RPGs and stuff, but they never immersed me in the characters like Final Fantasy VII does. Granted, it forces you to actually know the characters and learn them. But other than something like Cyberpunk, I really wasn't invested in anybody but the main character. You know, it just felt like the whole cast was the main characters, each with their own personalities, their own traits, their own skills. They each brought something to the table, other than the weird love trio thing with Aerith and Tifa and Jessie. Even though I like them all, I don't think Cloud needs 3 girlfriends. I won't get too far into that because there is some spoiler stuff, I guess you would say, even though the game's been out for a couple years and Rebirth is literally right around the corner. If you know, you know. We'll leave it there. But they do a great job at giving each character like a spotlight. You know, there's a full chapter where you're playing as Barrett, and then there's, you know, points where you're playing as Aerith or Tifa, where you're switching between the parties and getting to learn, you know, who they are, what their feelings are, what their thoughts are. And that's just not something I really was expecting in this game. I don't know why I wasn't expecting it, but I don't know, just going from these sorts of games where they're single player, you play as one character, you know, you focus on maybe 2 or 3 of the side characters and that's about it. But then you go to something like Final Fantasy where you're talking to a whole group of people, you're getting immersed, you're getting involved with everybody's story. You know, everybody needs Cloud to help them with this or that. And the main story forces you to go help them with some of these things. You know, even though I didn't do a whole lot of the side stuff in this game, which we'll get to why later, I was invested in everybody. And I think that is something to be said. Now, like I said, let's move on to some of my gripes and kind of my negative points with this game. A major one, which I'm probably going to get the most flack for, is the combat in this game. I can't tell you why. I really don't know why, but it just couldn't click with me, you know. And I liked being able to switch characters. The fact that I had to attack to build up a meter that let me use these super devastating and powerful moves, and I could combo them with the other party members and everything like this and that. But I don't know, dude, something just felt weird. It felt off, and that's more of a personal gripe. I've never really heard people complain about the combat too much. It's either they like it or they just like the old system. And, you know, I know you could have gone through this game playing the old system, but I wanted to play it intended like the remake was meant to be. And so I went in with that hybrid action combat system, and I just couldn't fit with it. There's something about it, dude. And, you know, I want to, especially near the end of the game, it just got super frustrating for me because it just couldn't click, and I was getting my ass kicked, and I was just getting mad. I was getting frustrated, but I ended up beating the game. I didn't put it down. This isn't Dark Souls. But yeah, it's more of a personal gripe. So I don't know. I want you to be hesitant on that because it's not a normal complaint for this game. It's just a personal thing for me. From somebody coming in from the outside in, I just couldn't click with me, man. My next complaint has to do with the level design. I know this is a remake and I don't have a clue of how the original is, but certain parts of this game feel so fucking long, dude. Probably the most notable one is one of like the train yard chapter where you're going through and fighting a bunch of ghosts just to get back to Sector 7. I know one of the major values and core parts of Final Fantasy is going on with a group of people, going on an adventure, fighting bad guys, all this and that, saving the world, whatever. But I don't know, dude. It shouldn't feel like 8 hours of this game or so are just moving from chapter, or not moving from chapter, but moving from point A to point B to get to the next major story beat. You know, it's okay, you know, needing to go to a place and, you know, do all this and that, but it shouldn't feel like we're taking the longest fucking route every single time, where something's always coming up in the way to make the sequence so fucking long. It just got dull so quick. And that's probably my biggest complaint of Final Fantasy 16. It's just the extra unneeded bullshit. You know, a game doesn't have to be long for it to be good. I know that there's been a recent complaint with that with Spider-Man. You know, my major complaint with that game was its story. I felt like it should have been longer, and more fleshed out. In this game, I feel like we spend too long on bullshit that just doesn't matter. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but because there is some major cutscenes and little story beats in there that, you know, do help with the story. Don't get me wrong, it's not all meaningless, but there's so much that they could have cut out. And you know, it still would have been a 20-hour game, you know, and I would have done more of the side stuff if some of that unnecessary bullshit was in the main story. You know, I think another major complaint, even though I don't think it's a fair complaint, it's just the story ends on a cliffhanger. You know, it doesn't really feel like the story ramps up until the last quarter of the game. So halfway, major event happens, gets good. Last quarter, you start really getting information, and then it just cuts you off. And I get that's for Rebirth. And, you know, apparently there's a third game in this series coming out too after Rebirth. So, you know, I get that the story isn't meant to be done, but it just felt like I wanted more. Even though I'm on the minority of this game, I walked away with an understanding of why people love this game, you know, and sure, I could have watched some videos to understand the combat a bit better or, you know, really tried to understand it myself to make me like it more. But even with me not doing that and not being a fan of some of the key elements of this game, I walked away satisfied with my experience. You know, I don't regret playing this game, like at all. And to be honest, I got pretty intrigued in the story to the point where I'm willing to really try the combat out for Rebirth and play through Rebirth, because I do want to see how the story ends. I want to see what the remakes have to offer compared to the original game. You know, eventually I do want to go play the original because that's one of everybody's favorite Final Fantasy games of all time. I wanted to see how each character would react to a situation, got invested enough in the story, and I walked away with an understanding. You don't need to love a video game to walk away enjoying it. Like, I don't have to be obsessed with every single game to like it. You know, Elden Ring was a huge obsession for me, and eventually I do want to go back and play it and even make a YouTube video on that game because I love that game. But I have a love-hate relationship with it. You know, there's some moments where I feel like busting my head on the wall, but I loved every second of that game. And that's partially kind of like this here. Other than some of my major gripes, I really enjoyed this experience. That brings me to my end point of this video. I have my own opinion on this game, but I still recommend it to people to try and play. I might not like everything in this game, but it's still a fantastic game. You know, they put some effort into it. They changed quite a bit, or I don't know if they changed quite a bit, but they've drawn out quite a bit, made the characters more likable, more enjoyable. You know, when people see that other people have a different opinion on something, they usually attack them. And, you know, that's not fair because I understand why people like this game. You know, I get the reception behind it. I understand everything. It was just a good game for me. It wasn't amazing. I liked the story. I liked what I played, but yeah, guys, you know, I might not exactly agree with it, but I can't act like I'm not interested in it. Just remember, if you take away anything from this video, just remember that it's okay for people to have a different opinion than you. And, you know, you shouldn't attack them for having a different perspective or different opinion because, you know, everybody's got something to bring to the table. This has been Sir UD. And if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and, you know, maybe even share the video. And if you want more perspectives on games or just hearing my thoughts on games I've played, make sure you click that subscribe button. And, you know, maybe even shoot a suggestion down in the comments of what games I should play next. Currently, I'm playing Resident Evil 4 and planning on making a video on that eventually. I don't know when we'll get around to it, but we'll get through it. Yeah, guys, stay safe, be kind. I'll talk to you all later. Peace.